Welcome to the Business of Defense. I'm Rich Brady, your host and CEO at the American Society of Military Comptrollers. ASMC proudly sponsors this podcast on Federal News Network. ASMC is the premier association of finance and accounting professionals who work in government and business in the defense sector. Our goal is to bridge the gap between the boardroom and the battlefield and drive financial transformation to improve the field of defense financial management and advance the mission of national security. My guest today is Sumner Lee, CEO of Fuse Integration. Fuse is a warfighter-focused engineering and design firm providing innovative communications, networking, and computing solutions for defense customers. Sumner founded Fuse in 2010 to improve the survivability, lethality, and data-enhanced decision-making by warfighters at the tactical edge. Earlier this year, Fuse was named to Inc. magazine's 2024 list of fastest-growing companies in the Pacific region and has been recognized by the Department of Defense with the Nunn Perry Award for Excellence. I look forward to hearing about Fuse's human-centered design work in the age of AI and digital transformation and how they navigate technology insertion challenges in government contracting. Sumner, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
Absolutely. I understand that you attended the Sea Air Space Symposium this week in National Harbor. Any initial insights that you want to share with us from that?
You know, it was a great show. It was very fun to be able to come together and informative too, with so many people in one place at one time. You get to do a lot of business, which is nice. It's hectic, but you get to work with lots of different clients that you see there, the different representatives from different program offices, as well as all the partners across both big industry and the smaller companies that we work with too, like us, who get to come and interact with everybody.
And were you an exhibitor there or an attendee?
Yeah, I had a small booth there. So Fuse had a small booth kind of in the corner, but it let us have a base of operations. We got to tell the stories about the things that we're doing right now, like the flight tests that we just had recently this last week and the last few months of flight test and maritime tests that we've been doing. So it's a great way to be able to explore opportunities with new partners and tell the stories about what it is we're doing to help the warfighter.
So take us back to the beginning. Fuse was started in 2010, and draw that arc for us. How you went from 2010 to 2024 exhibiting at Sea Air Space.
Yeah, so I started out my life in the Navy as a knuckle-dragging H-46 pilot, flying an age-old helicopter. That the most advanced piece of technology that we had was a handheld Garmin GPS. And you literally had to open the window and stick your arm out to get it to acquire because of the way the signal went through the canopy. So I went from flying that helicopter to working at SPAWAR, learning about Navy technology and implementation of technology. And while I was there, I decided that starting a company, starting my own business, and being able to drive through commercial industry was going to be a way that I could better serve the Navy, better help the industry, and kind of achieve my own personal goals.
And from the time you started till you had your first product, how long did that?
Yeah, so I started Fuse in 2010 and did your typical spend a couple years figuring out what you're going to do when you grow up, and had some fits and starts. Ended up focusing back on airborne networking, some of the things that I had done at SPAWAR. And we started with an SBIR, which is a great program to help small businesses get started, get going with innovative ideas, and infuse some military capital into those ideas that can become something ground-changing. We went and had an SBIR with a 3D printed product and design, and we took that inside of 2 years through phase 1, phase 2, and into a phase 3 SBIR. So that was really what helped me get going really strong with Fuse. And that was our airborne networking product called CORE that enables network connectivity at the tactical edge. And so that sprint through those SBIR phases was really helpful for us to get going.
And is that in use today in a Navy program, one of the services aviation programs?
So our products actually are now getting into both Navy and Air Force platforms. Okay. We're flying on B-52. We're installing in B-1 right now. We're flying on E-2D. We've flown on unmanned aircraft, working with helicopters, and then also maritime unmanned surface vehicles. So it's been really great, and my team has been incredible as we reach out to these different platforms and take our integrated systems into these different areas that have unique requirements that we have to deal with. So we've got to take these many commercial products as well as our own design and development in software and different advanced systems and be able to put those together in some really challenging environments.
So what's your 30-second pitch when somebody comes up to your booth there at Sea Air Space? You've got a customer in front of you. How do you hook them in that initial conversation?
So if I was to put it real simply, Fuse puts the internet into aircraft. So we bring a combination of resilient and secure networks to the tactical edge. We utilized various forms of SATCOM, a lot of new low Earth orbit satellites, medium Earth orbit satellites, and geostationary satellites, different kinds of links, bringing that advanced technology, data, that information out to the tactical edge. And then we put that together and network that with mesh network links and tactical data links. So you take the legacy information that's floating around the battle space right now on a bunch of older radios that are out there, and advanced IP networks and cyber secure network systems enabling AI and some of these advanced JADC2 type capabilities, and put that into the aircraft. We do it in a small form factor. We make it easy to use. We spend a lot of time working with the warfighter. That's really one of the things that drove me to start Fuse, is staying focused on the warfighter.
It seems like it'd be somewhat of a challenge. You know, you're out there working with some advanced technologies, but at the same time working with the services and trying to marry that up with their requirements. And so you're having to make some bets on where you think the services are going to go, what technology they're going to want for there, while trying to stay abreast with the latest of technology in the commercial sector. Can you talk a little bit about aligning those?
Absolutely. So it's really interesting working in the DoD where you have a very different user from your buyer. So program offices get so focused on the acquisition system and the process of buying technology and fielding it. And the user, so much of the time, gets overlooked. And far too many times, I saw some program office listen to the warfighter ask for a widget and then say, great, I'm going to bring you this Swiss Army knife that's the widget that you need. And it has 14 different pieces of technology, 14 different elements, and it actually missed the 3 things that the warfighter needed. And so when I started Fuse, I had spent a little bit of time in the commercial design world, and I got to learn and experience the best practices of commercial design thinking. Things like big companies like IDEO do for products like cell phones or home computers. These really well-designed tools that we use every day. And I saw a lot of value in that user design, that user-focused and design thinking approach. And so I've tried to bring that into the DoD system. So we pay a lot of attention to the warfighter. We spend a lot of time with the pilots, with the air crew, with the sailors and the Marines, so that we can make sure we understand their hard problems when they're in the field. And then as a business, you struggle with having to balance all of that user need that's here and now and present with all of the acquisition system, where you have to work through the bureaucracy and the challenges of contracts and all of those things. I've been fortunate that I've been able to balance that across our Navy projects and our Air Force projects, and we're growing a lot right now, being able to stay focused on the warfighter and pay a lot of attention to them.
Does the government understand, do those program executive offices understand design thinking and agile methodology and technology insertion? I don't intend this to be a leading question or anything, but do they appreciate it? And again, you've been able to successfully navigate that. So what are some of the lessons learned there to help companies be successful in bridging that, as they call the valley of death, and getting these technologies into programs of record?
So when you look at agile development and some of these processes, the DoD is working really hard to understand those and really struggling to do so, because it's a very different environment. You can't just go pick up agile software development and drop it down into military products. You have to have deadlines, you have to have capabilities that are enabled at certain times to enable kill chains that are critical for our warfighters. So agile methodologies, while they might work for applications on your phone when you're a commercial consumer, don't necessarily fit perfectly. So we've had to adapt. We adapt our design thinking processes and integrate a little bit with the systems engineering process. We adapt agile software development, and we use the smart approaches of agile software development to make sure that we're accelerating our processes as much as possible. But we also make sure that we hit the milestones, that we hit the end state that's required at certain times in that process.
You talked about earlier the your warfighter input and the importance of warfighter input into your designs, your technologies. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do that, and what's unique about your approach there?
Yeah, I tell you, I think that every company working with the DoD would benefit for spending more time with the sailors and the Marines and the aviators who are out there having to use their equipment. And even when a contract doesn't call for you to sit down with the user, one of the things that I drive into every single time is I push my team to make sure they sit down with that user. They spend time with the user. They travel to where that user has to work and understand his workflows, understand the challenges that he has when he's out there in these challenging environments, whether it's the middle of the night in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with just cold ocean all around, or in the middle of the desert having to operate while getting shot at. Having your team understand what they're doing and the challenges that those users face makes your products 1,000 times better. And that's something I drive at every day. I just actually got to go to Fallon and fly myself with one of our systems. So I got to spend a little bit of time struggling to understand the user applications, learning how the software worked when it's in the hands of the aviator, and understanding how to communicate with the guys on the ground. And so pushing to make sure you're sitting down with those users, I think, is so critical to delivering functional systems.
So walk us through that process a little bit. You get user input, customer input, the warfighter insights into this. You take it back, you've got your design team, your technical team, develop a product, and then you understand you test it on your own test aircraft, and then you bring it back and probably work that cycle numerous times before you are able to deliver a product. Is that essentially?
You've encapsulated a great way to look at it. It is a constant cycle that you're always bringing in the operator. So you start out and build understanding by sitting down and using ethnographic tools and understanding, building empathy with that user so that you understand what their problems are. You spend time with them. I really like to use models and other tools where they can touch and feel whatever the prototype is for what we're going to deliver. And then as you build out that prototype, you bring them back in. It's so easy to collaborate today. We've got all sorts of video-based collaboration tools and all sorts of digital collaboration tools so you can see and feel. And actually, just this week at Sierra Space, I brought one of these Quest headsets. So I was able to stand there and show some of these aviators, hey, this is the way this new aircraft pod will look. Here's the shape, here's the options that you have across these different shapes. So you can really understand what it is that we're building before you build it. And that constant process is a cycle of building understanding, building the system and testing it in the hands of the user, and then pulling those insights back into the process so you can iterate on that design. And that iterative process is one that can be hard for some of these big programmatic systems to understand, but it's one that's so critical. And one of the things that I struggle with is far too often you'll see these large DoD program offices say, okay, we're going to start and we're going to end, and this is what we need at the end, and this is just where we're going to go. And so they make a mountain out of a molehill. They make these programs that become monolithic giants, where when the monolithic programs are broken into smaller chunks, if you can just take a few steps forward and prototype, and then learn and add on a little bit of capability as you go, you're going to much more efficiently and effectively get to the end state where you want to be. And along the way, you're going to learn and see some change. One of our software products started out as a tool to be able to pull together different tactical data link systems, and ended up being a tool that visualized those systems because that's what the user needed. The JICO community that has to operate all these complex networks on the ships said, great, I like being able to link the different pieces together, but what I really want to do is see this on a map so I can understand what's going on in the battle space. And so by going through this iterative process, we learned and we understood what it was the JICOs really needed so we could deliver what made a difference for them in the battlefield.
You are listening to The Business of Defense with my guest, Sumner Lee, CEO of Fuse Integration. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Business of Defense, sponsored by ASMC on Federal News Network. I'm talking with Sumner Lee, CEO of Fuse Integration. Having served as a naval aviator, Sumner and his team's noble cause is advancing warfighting capabilities with elegant, super-focused communications, networks, and software systems. They take their commitment to the warfighter very seriously. This vision, supported by their core values, has led to sustained growth in a very competitive business environment. Sumner, I'd like to go back and talk a little bit about your background. What brought you to Fuse in this sector, really? You mentioned that you were a naval aviator. You flew helicopters.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that and how that influences your leadership of Fuse Integration?
So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad started a boat business called Centurion Boats the year I was born, and so I've been around innovation and experimentation and development and business growth for my entire life. And so I always knew I wanted to do something like that. I mean, one of my greatest role models, actually I'd say my greatest role model has got to be my dad and the way that he grew his company and has just done amazing things throughout his life. He's also an aviator, so he got me excited about flying. And it was kind of funny because in high school when I said, I think I might go to the Naval Academy, he said, "You're going to do what? You know, you have to be in the Navy if you do that." And it became an incredible experience. And my Naval Academy years were formative and amazing. And I really started to fall in love with the people inside the Navy. My great friends who are now in positions of leadership and the people who are the enlisted teams that have to go out and execute. And so I found that starting a business that was focused on serving the Navy was something that really meant a lot to me. It's where I wanted to go. And pulling together my design experience along with my technology experience and building that on top of my experience of flying helicopters. I deployed on USS Boxer and on USS Bridge. I got to go out and fly through the middle of the night with night vision goggles on, with the rain falling and landing on a ship that's listing sideways. You know, these experiences of what's actually something hard to go do and something a little bit scary have really helped me to focus on the things that are important for Fuse to do to help those guys that are out there in that situation today.
And what has that led to, the culture that you've developed at Fuse?
So I've actually tried to model Fuse after a squadron. I think there's a lot of positive things that come from that squadron environment, a lot of fun camaraderie, a lot of team building and things that we do, like give call signs to our engineers and developers. They all kind of cock their heads sideways and go, "Oh, this is kind of weird," but we make it a lot of fun, and it's a way to bring everybody together. We stood up our own little test squadron, so I've got an O2A aircraft and an OV-10 aircraft that we're building out right now, so we'll be able to do more tests, support more real-world stuff. And I even run some of those guys who actually fly in the aircraft through a little PQS, and we'll give them Fuse aircrew support wings and give them a patch to wear when they're going out to be able to fly in the aircraft and test our gear.
And I understand you went to great lengths in your offices there in San Diego to build that out to be a collaborative, ideation type of an environment. Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of having an environment like that to support, again, your company culture?
So we've designed Fuse to be a creative engineering space, a place that gets people excited about doing what they're doing and gets them to think out of the box a little bit. And I am always proud when a colonel or a captain or admiral walks into our space and looks around and says, "This looks nothing like any defense contractor I've ever been to before." I know I'm doing something right when I hear that, right? And it's because the young folks that we employ, who are the brilliant software developers, the mechanical engineers, the engineering leadership, they want to have an environment that's fun. They want to have an environment that makes them think out of the box, that makes them get focused on what they're doing. And so we've got an engineering space that has a development lab. It's got a test space where we can actually test our systems both over RF and in wired environments. And then we've got a collaborative space with whiteboards everywhere. And of course, we've got all your obligatory snacks, and we're still small enough to have a keg in the office, so that ends up being a pretty good deal too.
And I assume you had a fair number of mentors along the way. Can you talk a little bit about those and what advice they gave you that's helping you lead your company today?
So I've had a lot of really great mentors throughout my time, starting with my dad, his amazing skills of entrepreneurialism, design, his own skills in design. And then my time in the military, I had excellent military mentors all along the way, both when I was going to school, when I was flying, and afterwards. And now in the business environment, I've been able to pull in some excellent human beings to help me shape Fuse, our board of advisors, guys like Brad Feldman, who have incredible experience in the commercial world and building strong and valuable companies are helping me to build Fuse and guide its path along.
And can you talk a little bit about the structure of Infuse? You mentioned you've got a board of advisors. I think you're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business as well. And so what point did you bring on that board of advisors? And can you talk a little bit about how they help a company like yours, one, grow and then get to the next level, and when you would likely go to a fiduciary board?
So I started Fuse with was myself, Chad, and Frank Whipple. And Frank Whipple's a retired captain, and he's another one of these great advisors and mentors that I have. And we have been able to grow Fuse with, now it's Frank and I who are the board members, along with a retired admiral who helps us and helps guide the company. And then we've added on this board of advisors who provides this advisory role. Fuse is privately held, and gosh, we're growing exponentially right now, which is really a lot of fun. And I'm starting now to shape the way that Fuse works, looking towards the future, moving towards that $100 million company, which is our target and where we're going in the next couple of years. And so I'm starting to build out that structure with a CFO, with a new president that I've brought on who's doing an excellent job of leading our team, and with that board that's going to be shaping us so that we can, number one, continue to deliver to the user and to the warfighter, and two, make sure that we're building value for the company simultaneously.
And what opportunities and challenges do you see in the market in the next few years?
I think that there are huge opportunities in this whole space of digital connectivity, information flow, and warfare that is based on getting the right data to the right place at the right time. We are right in the middle of that, and we're taking those JADC2 type of capabilities out to multiple platforms right now. We're really doing it from the bottom up, deploying on B-52, on F-18, on E-2D, on these platforms that are out there having to operate right now. And we're doing it in a way that is using the best technology that we have in hand right now so we can make a difference in the fight tonight, as well as being ready and transitioning to those advanced technologies that come along, playing with AI, playing with natural language models, being able to inject different types of applications and sensors and tools into what we're doing. I think that there's a huge opportunity for what we're doing right now to accelerate the pace of delivering technology to the fleet. And there's also huge challenges as these programs really get large and try to maneuver taking best practices of commercial systems and putting it into DoD hands.
I'm glad you mentioned AI because I wanted to touch on that. I would think that information overload would be an issue. There's so much data out there, and when you're in a cockpit, there's only so much you can take in. So how do you, from a human design perspective, how do you control that, number one? And number two, is there opportunities with AI to help manage that?
Absolutely. So right now, as you start to connect to the grid, to the information, the information superhighway, right? There we are, bringing that to the cockpit. Oh my God, it is a fire hose of information. It is way too much to digest. And so we actually spend a lot of our time with the users weeding out the data that is superfluous to their mission. We might be able to give them all the data in the world, but they need to stay focused on one route of flight, one mission objective, and the pieces of data that are going to help them make specific decisions along that route so that they can survive and that they can accomplish their mission. So we actually spend a whole lot of time with the users looking at how do we deprecate information away from what we're putting in front of them? How do we communicate with them better, whether it's visually or with audio? What are the different things where they need to be able to touch something that's going to give them feedback and make sure that that's in their workflow of what they're doing? And one of those things is using workflows, that we draw out mission threads, we draw out different workflows, and we make sure they're adaptable to the different environments that they have to work in.
One last question I've got to ask, only because you brought it up. What's your call sign and how did you get it?
Oh gosh. So I've got a call sign of Vader, and it comes from my time at the Naval Academy. And there was you might call it a tradition of dark siding. And while I was at the Naval Academy, I was known to dark side a little bit.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to thank today's guest, Sumner Lee, CEO of Fuse Integration, for providing us his unique perspective on defense contracting, as well as how he's built a strong and loyal team while maintaining commitment to the warfighter as the end user of its products and services. Watch The Business of Defense next month where we bring you inside the companies working to drive change in the defense sector, to hear directly from their business leaders and to understand how they create value for their companies and their customers. And check out ASMC's website at asmconline.org to register for our upcoming education and professional development opportunities, including the Professional Development Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, where we will have an exciting announcement about ASMC's rebranding. You won't want to miss it. I'm Rich Brady, CEO of the American Society of Military Comptrollers. You are listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search ASMC. Thank you.